Hey everybody, it's time to talk with Dynamite Comics own writer Soo Lee, and I'm so excited. We've been trying to get together now for a while, and fortunately for us, or unfortunately for some of us, maybe the series is almost at an end, so we're basically catching up just before the final chapter is going to launch. And I'm so proud to be talking to Sue. Hello, good afternoon. How are you doing?
And I'm good. Thank you so much. And you know what? It's a good starting point for the interview because when you're in the first issue, you kind of get the questions. Now that you have like a few issues in, I feel like it would be much more interesting to talk about what's happening so far. So I think this is like a happy
Exactly.
place.
Yes, yes, yes. No, I think everything worked out perfectly, and I'm really just thrilled with what's happened with this series so far. But before we get to that, Sue, tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, I'm a comic book creator and writer now. Sorry if my voice is like raspy, it's because New York Comic Con just ended and I lost my voice for like 2 days and it's just coming back. And I'm based in New York. I have a bunch of creator-owned books that I'm working on, Carmilla, the First Vampire, and Carmilla, the Last Vampire Hunter. I'm also working on uh, a few stories. I mean, again, for Cheetara, I worked on Maleficent. Wrote and drew that, among various other titles.
Now you've got some powerful female characters that you have written for, so that's quite exciting to see that Chitara's up there with these world-renowned characters. Um, do you prefer writing or drawing? You're an artist as well, aren't you?
Yes, yes. I enjoy drawing a lot. I mean, I think I that is my strong suit because that's where I started. And writing took me a little bit to do. I did a one-shot Vampirella fairy tale book a while ago, and it wasn't the best writing. So that was like my baby step into actual writing. And so Maleficent was like the next biggest feat for me, and then Chitara was like the biggest. So every step that I take seems to be like the stakes are a little bit higher. And with Chitara, I've started to enjoy writing more because I had to learn to tailor it for someone else, which is a whole other thing. But easier because I can draw. So I can like picture what the artist might want from me when in terms of script. But I do love drawing. I'll never stop drawing. But I gotta say, I really, really enjoy writing. So I want to keep going with that. Well,
So how
both,
did
if I can.
yes, of course. So how did you get involved with ThunderCats?
I mean, I've worked with my editor Nate on a bunch of stuff. Sonia, Maleficent, uh, you know, uh, and the Vampirella fairy tale one. So I feel like we've had a very good rapport, and I guess he just had random faith in me and decided, hey, do you want to write this? So I said yes.
'Cause this was like this is the very first spin-off from the ThunderCats series, and to have it announced as it being for Chitara was like a massive surprise. I mean, one would think that other one of the other male characters would get it, but Chitara is like she's like every 80s boys icon. I mean, we all loved her when we grew up. I mean, I'm a massive Super 7 fan, and they
Oh,
just brought out this toy version of the Chitara character. I mean, I just love it. So to have her have her own story is so exciting. So when you got in, when they said, okay, you're going ahead with Chitara, what background and guidelines did you get when you started this project? Were you told you have to go this direction, or were you free to create your own story?
was literally free for all. Do whatever you think, the story, the character, and just go for it. So there weren't too many limitations. Just not to read these. What was it? The Wildcats version or whatever that Marvel put out, and the cartoons, the 2011 cartoons. Just with the exceptions of those, fit whatever you think fits the mold for the original '80s cartoon.
Because that's interesting. I actually wanted to ask you because Chitara has a different backstory in the 2011 tune. So you were basically told to stay clear of that, um,
Yeah.
so that you
I
can
don't even
have.
know what happens in that. Yeah.
It's fairly similar. There is also a relationship with Tigra in there. So it's so cool to see this happening because I mean when I was a kid, there was never any real hint of Chitara and Tigra being a couple. But the way that the toys were released back in the day had a two-pack for Chitara and Wily Kit and Tigra and Wily Cat. And when I had those, I always thought that they were the mom and the dad of the two little kittens. So it's actually
I-
so cool to see this.
Yeah, no, I think it also makes sense. And I gotta say, I was rewatching the original cartoons for it, and there's not a lot of hints of anything. It is really like you just gotta make it up because there's not a lot of backstory. But I always say this in every interview. The first episode tells you a lot more than you think it does. Like immediately when the ship, right, it's being raided, and then whatever. Tiger's like one of the first people who are like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I'm like, why is he so loyal to Cheetara, right? I mean, even Panthro had like a little bit of a pushback being like, oh no, wake him up. And Cheetara was like, don't wake him up. He's just a kid. You know what I mean? So there's some pushback, but there's a reason why Tiger was so willing to say yes to her immediately. And then like, you know what I mean? And throughout the show, he is kind of like in the most sweetest way, like a yes man to a lot of things that happen, and I feel like, if I and you said that it's very similar to the Marvel one. I guess it really does. We are picking up what they're putting down, There's only like so much that we can inference from, but I think the where we go actually does make a lot of sense.
So this you are basically telling me I have to go rewatch the show because you are seeing things in a different angle that I've never. I've seen that cartoon so many times. I love watching it. It's just it's a hobby. It's all I just love watching it. So you're actually telling me to see it in a different light, and that's quite interesting because what how we all experience it is different, and you've pulled from that something that I've never picked up on, but as you mentioned it now, it is true, it is there. So that is actually so cool that you brought that into your own series. Now the next chapter is chapter 5, and that's the final chapter of this Chitara uh, spin-off. Will there be a later Chitara spin-off, or is this just a one-off 5 chapter episode and that's it?
Not that I know of, but we'll see. We never know what happens, but not that I know of so far.
Okay. Now, as a female writer, obviously you have strong, powerful female characters that you write for. Is there any personal experience that you like to put in there, or things that you would like to be put out there as a female writer that you don't think usual male writers actually understand? Because obviously they are different. So, is there any experience that you bring into your characters, and was there anything specific that you brought in with Chitara?
Yeah, like how you said, oh, I didn't notice the things you said about the cartoon. I mean, I'm rewatching it as like a grown woman, right? When in versus when I first saw it, and we see things a little differently, and that's true. I think that's true. And so I put a lot of things, experiences that many women might have, um, which is like and everyone else is welcome to see it. Intuition is a big part, like woman's intuition, right? I mean, Chitara has psychic abilities that I'm heavily leaning into because it's something that she never talks about but relies on. And so I think a lot of women go through the same thing, right? There's a lot of things that, we feel that a lot of other people don't feel, or, even safety, right? So I put a lot of that into as well because women are told to just ignore these feelings of like danger or something, right? And that's a real thing. But with Chitara, she's like leaning into it, and in the book, no one. I think the trope is that there are men in stories that don't believe the woman. I feel like that's a little too. It's a little overdone, and it's I think it doesn't help the story. So I want it to be that people actually do believe Cheetara because she's not the underdog. She is an established character who people already trust. So then it's up to her to make the decisions. And everyone else is like, you know what? We believe you, let's do it, and then see what the story is around it. Because if I made it about people not believing her, it just like, I feel like it cheapens her character a bit. So I wanted to automatically be like, she's established, we already know what's going to happen, now let's see what happens.
So this story, it is very much Thundercats, but even though it is Chitara centric, it feels like it's a proper prequel that could have also worked for the cartoon itself, even though it's a little bit updated. Was that intentional to have it be like that?
No, but I'm glad that it does. Like, if anything, that's a big compliment, and I'm very grateful. But yeah, I mean, it kind of is, right? It's like we don't know who she is. We don't know what happens. We don't know anything about anyone except for Lionel, and she's like one of the first other characters you see, right? And we're like, I'm trying to be smart about the relationship between the characters and the cartoon because there really isn't a lot. It's very sparse, right? It's only like 20 minutes per episode too. So it's really hard to say. But I figured, what's the most realistic way I can make these things make sense and not just like shoehorn it in there, especially the relationships of the characters. So even if it wasn't intentional, I'm trying my best to tie them all in. There's like a red string of like, well, this person's connected to this and this. I feel like I did my best, and if it translates well, then I'm glad that I could do that.
It definitely did. And what I loved about this is you see some of these, well, all of them, you see them in their younger years. So I mean, there's Tigra without the mustache. I know that there's been a lot of one side and one side about the mustache, but he doesn't have it here. Was that intentional?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of like again, there's no like set timeline on how far back it was before the destruction, but there is definitely like they're still learning a little bit, right? She's still unsure. Tiger's still like, a young boy, but not quite a boy. Maybe in Thunderen like a lore, it's like dog years. Maybe they age like 20 years within the span of 5, right? It could be they live forever pretty much. They're like hundreds of years old. So I figured this is the easiest way to show that he's young. I mean, Jaga also looked too, right?
Yes, exactly. So it was so cool to see Claudius, and it was so cool to see Jaga there. He's alive, obviously. He's not a ghost yet, or whatever
Spoilers, yeah.
happens, or whatever happens to him in the next few chapters. So you said that there's no time specified as to when this is taking place. Can you divulge how far back this is actually taking place? Because, like I said, they might be aging differently, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I figured it's like a 5 to 10 within a 5 to 10 year difference, right? I feel like that would be the most sense. But I don't want to spoil the last issue, and that's the most probably the most unknown of the unknown because we really don't know. There's like literally known, and I kind of want there to be a sense of doom and sadness leading up to it because if you haven't seen, I mean, everyone knows what happens, right? It starts off from the activist station of their home being destroyed, so it's like a slow creep up into, you know killing your darling, right? I ultimately this is going to happen, but I want it to be like the last I was going to say last episode, the last issue. I wanted it to be a little bit more of a slow crawl where the time then becomes a little bit more vague of how long does this happen because we don't know. It's kind of like it's a little morbid, but it's a little bit of a death sentence, right? We don't know when it's going to happen. It's going to happen any day, tomorrow, 10 from now. So that's when the longest period happens for me.
The thing is, you've been teasing with her sixth sense all throughout, where she's had so many flashes, and then of course there was these attacks that came, and then whatever is in the mines, and that is really so. I want to know what's in those mines, and what is that Spidera that we saw, that big giant spider. it's like what is it that they're after? And obviously they were well, understood that they were defeated, but they're going to come back. So it's something. It's you know how it ends, but it's how to get there. I think that's that little piece that I'm so eager to find out. So I would love to know what's happening in the next chapter, and it's coming out very soon. So hopefully
Yes,
when that
next month.
happens, it's going to be like poof. So what I wanted to also ask you, there's the main series, the relationships that she has there with Tigra and Panthro. It's reflected in here as well. You can see the bond that they've got. And then there was something that I noticed that in the first chapter, Panthro bests her, so she loses the battle with him. But in the main series, she actually it's in reverse, where she actually then beats him. Um, did you deliberately include that here, or were you aware of what was happening in the main series at the time of writing that she actually beats him later, or puts him in his place, or whatever it is that fight that they fought?
I think Declan is, I mean, he's been looking at my series as it goes on. So I think for him, he's been adding a little bit of what I've been doing because it is like a backwards thing, right? So I guess, he's a smart writer, so I think he's adding a little bit of like the relationship and cleverly adding it into his series so that you see in tandem what their relationship is like, because again, they're younger. She's a young woman, right? So she's established, but she's still unsure. So him Panthro is like the best of the best ThunderCats, right? He's probably like one of the better, like stronger and the most smartest one. But I think it shows the progress of her maturing and being more confident and like actually learning, right? And Panthro, it's like, and I tease it a little bit, right? Like, is Panthro being, is Cheetara being funny, or by losing, or what's happening? But I want there to be growth. So I think Declan has picked up what I was putting down, if anything. I don't know if it's by coincidence, but yeah, I don't see how he wouldn't have picked that up.
It was so awesome that the timing when the first chapter came out, it was just after chapter 5 of the main series, and that was also basically Chitara centric. And then the next moment we get this whole wonderful story. It's still Thundercats, but it's great to finally see Chitara come into the spotlight
Yeah,
and take charge.
yeah.
So she knows a lot of things that's going to happen, or she's sensing it. We are all excited for what happens in the next chapter. We're all scared because even though we know what's going to happen, it is still scary. We've seen some other characters from the cartoon. We've seen Bengali, we've seen Pumaira. There's been Link. So will there be any other characters that are going to make a surprise appearance in chapter 5?
I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, but it is pretty clear cut. You know what I mean? Because this is ultimately where it ends so far. So there's not much space for more, even if there was.
Okay.
I'm trying to
Okay.
leave it vague, but I do want to, I think you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, I do. So you mentioned Thundera as in a person who traveled through space and settled here after fighting his enemies. So will we ever meet this Thundera person? Do you know? Is it a person? Or is it what?
You know what? I looked up a lot of like, I had to do a deep dive into the lore, and I will say the fans are pretty good. The fans are pretty good at like finding information. So I do credit a lot of things online. Um, but don't know. We have no idea. And like the reason why we don't know is because it's a thing that they worship, and it was one of those things where in the flashback episodes, where he goes back and tries to like and meets his dad, right? um that's still very vague. So I'm literally just trying to put the pieces of like, well, this civilization is so advanced. Who were these people? There's clearly someone before Jaga, right? Because he was the one with the right, all the the treasures, and then like he was the most capable one, right? So who was there before then? Before, it must have been a tradition. So it only makes sense that a world was built upon a person or a god or like something that you worship, and they're so sacred around. And also they're fairly spiritual, magical, right? I mean, like even Mumra has magical powers. So the entire thing is like based around that. So I was like, okay, so it's not a religion, but there's definitely something that they worship. Um, and I will say, like, the fans have said that this is a god. So I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And so I just like put all that together.
Okay, because you've now given us a world that, like you said, we've only seen pieces of it in the cartoon. We finally actually get to walk through the cities and see the people live and
Yeah.
see them worship and all of that. How was that as a writer to be able to create things that we've only ever wondered about, but never get to see it? And now here it is. We've got our feet on Thundera. We can actually see what this place looked like.
I'm very nerd. I mean, my hope is that I'm very flattered and honored that I get to do that. And I hope whenever people think about the lore of Thundercats and Thundera, that they think of mine first. Like, I hope they can imagine, use that as reference. I think that would be super cool.
The thing is, there is no other point of reference really. You're the first
Right.
one to actually deep dive into this and give us something. So that is actually so much fun to when I mean I've got a massive toy collection just to the side here, and to when I look at them, I see the cartoon and I see scenes from the show. But when I've now got the comic books as well and reading this history, it like gives you a different perspective of the characters. And is that ever
Yeah.
intentional that you, when you create something, that you want people to add these ideas or suggestions onto what they already think and love about the character? Do you do that intentionally, or does that come as a surprise to you?
No, that's intentional. I had to go to so many episodes. Like in the first, in one of the first season. Oh my gosh, I'm getting the cartoons lingo mixed up with issues. One of the first issues, you see the gods in the statue. Well, I added that in there because again, they're worshiping. Why is the cat Leo important? Because it's a frame of reference for their like city and their world, and also place of worship and all that stuff. But like there's an episode where like these big gods rise up from the ground and they're fighting them. Okay, if you're a ThunderCats fan, I don't remember what episode, but they're like stone creatures that
The
they're like,
stone giants,
you
yes.
know, yeah, yeah. He like someone actually says, "Oh, those are the ancient gods of Thundera," and I'm like, okay, well, who are these people? So I figured like if Mara or whoever it was like rose them from something to mess with them, then they have to have been from something. So I figured I should add that in the temples to like give a throwback to that episode as extra context to be like, I am paying attention. This is like things that actually make sense in the thing. Like, but they're not established. I literally have to pick pieces of conversations that these people are having in the show and using it as reference. And then like I rewatching the cartoons, I was listening to how they were behaving with each other and like who is close to who and who's traveling with who and who is relying on each other and using that as like reference of their relationship. So I did try very hard to make sure that it makes sense. And I remember someone coming up to me in New York Comic Con and saying that my dialogue was the closest to the cartoon that they've ever read for, and I thought that was like super cool.
It does, like I said, it does feel like a proper prequel. And I've never thought of the dialogue being that, but now it makes absolute sense that that is why I'm so familiar with it. And that's what's really nice about this, a familiarity about it. Even though it's new and modern, and a fresh take on this, it is still something that we're familiar with. And I'm sure that other 80s fans of Thundercats, they are going to recognize this and just fall in love with it. If
I
you
hope
haven't read it
so.
yet, if you have not read it yet, you have to go and get these issues. They are really so cool. So, will there be a complete book of these 5 chapters released in the future? Do you know?
Oh yeah, I'm sure there will be. There's no way that there won't be. There will be for sure.
Okay, okay, that's cool. Then there's a scene in one of the chapters where there's when these mutants arrive, but you have shown us so many different types of mutants that we've never seen before. They don't have names, but I could recognize many animals and bugs and things like that. Did you name any of those species that you created for this attack?
No, because I was also looking up the lore of the mutants. I had to do a deep dive on that. Um, they are literally another planet. And those three that we see, the baboon one, the vulture one, the goblin one, like they are the main guys, right? But then if they're the guys, I only imagine it's just like a anthropomorphic, like just creatures. And so it's just like a planet, like these, strange like really mutant, animal beings. Um, no, they don't even have, there's like no other known. I just figured this would only make sense if they come from a planet like that. They're just known as mutants too. So I was like, I don't I don't know if I need to go into deeper of their name. Because, spoiler, but if you haven't seen it, but most of them doesn't exist anyways anymore.
It was just really fun to actually see different species as part of the attack because we are only used to the reptilians and the monkeys and the jackals and the vulture men. So it was really
The jackals, yes, thank you. Sorry. Yes.
fun to see these different characters or different species. So how far back is your personal connection with Thundercats? Did you grow up with Thundercats? What is some of your earliest memories of Thundercats?
I didn't grow up with it. Well, I watched uh, you know, I was born right when ThunderCats was out, right? So I could only watch like the reruns, if that's what you want to call
Yes.
it. But I wasn't an avid ThunderCats watcher, but it was things that I actually have. Maybe the first season was the most familiar, the ones I was most familiar with, and then the intro song. I think that's one of the best intros in American cartoons in a very long time.
Definitely, definitely. So, did you have any toys, or were you familiar with the toys as a kid, or was there a favorite character for you, some a character that you were drawn to, just in general?
Yeah, my brother and I had like a just a box full of 80s toys. 80s and 90s toys. So I don't, it's hard to remember. It was like that, G.I. Joe, Barbie, and they all like, played with each other and kissed and stuff, right? So I don't really remember which, but I do remember my brother had a Lino one and a Panthro. I remember having a Panthro one for sure. But my favorite character, I mean, right? It has to be Tara. Like I know it's corny, but like honestly, she's like my baby now. I think I know best, I know her best, and she's my favorite. I also like
Well,
Snarf.
you well, the irony is when I was a little boy, the very first action figure that I got was Cheetara and Wily Kid. I didn't want Lion-O. I wanted the Cheetara. I was 6 years old. I walked into the shop and I saw it on the shelf. I was with my family and my cousins were also there. And I wanted that figure so badly. I mean, it's Cheetara, so I'm a big Cheetara fan. So it's actually such an
Same.
honor to speak to you about this character that
Oh
we
my
both adore.
gosh.
So
I
what
mean,
I
yeah, no, I
wanted to
love her for sure.
yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome. So, this is now a rather sensitive question, or I have been nailed about it before. Uh, but were you ever considering bringing in the nudity or the nudity that they had in the very first episode in your prequel?
Oh, it's a weird episode, right? When I rewatched it, I was like, no, it's drawn as if they have clothes on, but they are nude. And I thought that was really interesting because I was like, is that because of the pun? They weren't sure if they were like, I don't know what the backstory is, but I'm sure there was more of like a logical reason behind why they didn't have outfits on. Um, but no, because it had to be for a certain age range. So I couldn't even if I wanted to, nothing I did, weren't allowed to do stuff like that. It is for kids mostly. Well, lower audience and then adults as well.
So like you just said, this is for kids as well. So when you wrote the stories, were you considering age groups as well in terms of the subjects that you could approach or things that you could mention in a certain way that adult audiences would understand or interpret differently versus how children would interpret it?
No, I think I don't think it's good to talk down to kids. And I think kids are actually pretty smart when it comes to understanding stories and ideas. So I didn't even think about that all. I just gave them the benefit of the doubt to pick it up. And then also for people who are fans of ThunderCats, I'm sure it, hope like, like everything we discussed, I hope it's like, oh, you're right. I did get that. So hopefully it's for the world.
Okay, that's awesome. So this next chapter, this final chapter, do you have any teasers that you want to leave us with before we sign off so that people can get so excited about this? I mean, it's going to be explosive. This finale is it going to lead into the destruction of Thundera or not?
Oh, that's such a yes or no answer. It is a little, I personally think it's a little sad, and it is basically a waiting game of like demise. There's hopefulness in the future because we know what happens, but I did want to make sure people felt like this is it. This is goodbye forever to this place. Because the first issue, the first page, I wanted it to be really beautiful because I wanted it to be like, why are they so adamant of making Thunder like what Thundera 3 was it or whatever it was called, right? Like I'm blanking right now, but why are they so adamant on remaking this life? There's such an attachment to that. So I figured I need to make sure you're in love with this place, and then I need to make sure that you're sad that it's gonna go away.
I'm already sad. I'm already sad that the story is
You
ending.
should be no.
It is depressing, but it is exciting as well because we get to experience something that we've never experienced before. And Soo, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for what you have created here, and I think you can be extremely proud of this new
Oh,
Cheetara comic that you have written.
thank you. I really appreciate it. And honestly, thank you to all the fans who've been super nice. Everyone, the reviews online are, not great, but that's okay because every fan I've met in person have been so supportive, and they've said nothing but only great things about it. And I'm like, the fact that I could make Origin from nothing, right, is like a big honor. And I hopefully did ThunderCats proud and them proud, and that like I gave life to characters in a world that people haven't really thought about. And I'm like Chitara's mom now, so I'm very proud.
That's fantastic. Well, I don't bother with reviews. I've never read any reviews because I have to make up my own mind first. And I'm not a comic book person, and I've never, as a kid, I never bought comics, but I am familiar with it, and it was so much fun to read this, and it was really just an eye opener and an experience. It was a joyride. So thank you so much, Soo, and it's been a pleasure to be chatting with you, and I hope we get to talk again in the future. Are you going to be working on Silverhawks maybe? Or involved
No,
with
wasn't
Silverhawks?
asked. No, I haven't. That hasn't been on my table.
Okay, well, we hope to get you back in the Thunderverse in the future,
Yes.
whatever format it is going to be. But thank you.
Yeah.
You've really just done Cheetara proud, and I'm sure that she will definitely be so
Oh, thank
excited.
you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much. I really
and
appreciate it.
have a wonderful evening. So thank you everybody for tuning in. It was really lovely to talk to Soo. And if you haven't gotten this Cheetara comic, it is available now from Dynamite Comics. So go and get it. It's really just so cool.